Nettles III. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. They occasionally let
Woohoo!
me out of my box.
Yeah, well, I did. Uh-oh. I let the clown out of the box. I mean, I don't know you that well. I can't make fun of you just yet. I don't know you well enough. Give me about 30 minutes though, but we can definitely do some stuff here.
Trust me, I have a sense of humor. You can't do the things that I do and not have a sense of humor.
Oh, I totally get it. I interview people for a living. You learn to develop like a sense of humor. My co-host on my other show tortures me with like baked goods all the time. She sends me pictures of stuff she bakes for her son. And I'm just like, I hate you, just a little on the inside, just a little bit right now.
Nope, embrace the hate.
I
If you're
know.
not sharing, yeah, just embrace the hate.
Yeah. Hate's the best.
No. Now, love everybody. It's not worth the time and the energy to go. Somebody's that big of a pain. Just shut them. Move on.
No, I totally agree. She like we have a good relationship. Like when I enjoy doing the show with her. She enjoys doing the show with me, and we so. But that just means like we do all these little things, like
Oh,
like, and that's hers to me. She just tortures me with that. I got even with her though. We're doing an Anchorman like homage tribute parody for our Christmas episode, and that's totally like that was like I asked to do it just because how life works. If you don't know if you're going to get it, just ask. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. They said yes.
no, the worst thing that can happen sometimes somebody goes, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a fun idea." Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, like I say, I love the friends I've got like that, where you're doing partnerships and things, and you just give each other hell. We did an episode of for the 50th anniversary of the Eye of Argon um, last year, because they always do a big reading of the Eye of Argon at Balticon. Balticon? I think it's Balticon. Anyway, because of the great year of the pandemic, they couldn't do that. And so for Continual, our little network, we recorded an episode. Jean Marie Ward was recording it. She was hosting it, doing the whole thing. She was in the center square of all the people doing the live reading of it, talking about the history of the Eye of Argon, which is the worst science fiction and fantasy story ever written, at least up until that point. There are people that have topped it since, but we
Oh,
won't.
God.
Yeah, we won't talk about Kindle Unlimited. But there are. It was done as the worst story. Well, Jean Marie forgot to hide herself in the middle of it, even though she wasn't talking. And so you got to watch her going through the whole thing, just howling with laughter and just facial expressions and everything through the middle of it. And she's like, "Oh hell!" So the video comes over to me, and she's like, "What can you do?" And I said, "Oh, I can do something." So I wound up finding a bunch of stock video and stock images and stuff, all of which looked like eyes, stuff like an oval rock, different things like that. Except for the fact there's about a 3-second clip in the middle of it where just the look on her face was so priceless that instead of blending over into the next image, all you see is her howling. I slap her name in the middle of it, and then we cut to the next image.
That's awesome. That is
So yeah,
awesome.
you gotta. If you're not a little bit evil, you can't do media.
No, you have to realize that this job comes with a lot of things. So you gotta have a sense of humor about it because Lord knows I'm going to, and I've done this. I've done almost 700 of these bad boys. I have made an ass of myself on my own show plenty of times, and plenty more, God willing. So, but
I usually make an ass of myself whether I'm on air or not. So
it's a gift. It's a true gift. It's a true like skill, right? But it's also just that quiet confidence. Like whether it's for better or for worse, just I'm going to be myself. I'm okay with the mistakes I'm going to make. I'll own them and then move on. And some days I'm dumber than others.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
If nothing else in life, be a warning to others.
that's right. Be what not to do, and you can encourage people to do what to do. Kids, you'll turn out just like me if you do this. And if that doesn't scare you, nothing will.
I did that to my nephew at Thanksgiving. I looked at him and I said, "Kid, this is your future. Love that hair while you still have it."
There's like that moment of tears in the eyes.
Hmm. I'm like, yep, that whole skinny thing, full head of hair, the whole bit going on. I'm like, yeah. Get ready to say goodbye to that. This is your future kid. That
And so did he start drinking that night? I mean, it's just like, oh
well,
god,
he's only God, I can't even how old he is. He's only 12. So
a little early for that, but yeah, probably made him think about it. It's like, hey, might as well just start now. No, kidding, man.
no, the one that made me feel old was my niece turning 16. I'm like, nope, nope, nope.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen one day. One day, but you just wake up and everybody's older. I just turned 40, and it's just like, holy shit, I've lived about half my life. Probably, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more than that, but I'm at around that like wonderful halfway point. You know, I, I think, um, and I understand far less than when I started, man. I understand far less.
Hey, look, man, I turned 40 sitting in a hotel in Omaha, Nebraska, working on a project, drinking really bad, cheap beer at the hotel.
Ugh.
It was much better when I turned 30 in San Diego and they took me out for the night. And that was a much rougher day the next day.
Yeah. No, 30 was great. 40 for me was just I was in Windsor, Ontario, and with my family getting ready to come back to Alberta. I had like this weird. I'm one of those people that kind of listens to my intuition. Just something told me you needed to come back out here. I'm not quite sure where that all is going to magically lead, but I'm in the mountains right now, so it's not all bad.
I'll be heading back up to our place in the mountains tomorrow, so I'll be
Yeah,
back out of
yeah.
Charlotte.
So are you going to come back? Because I'm sure every year that's a little harder.
Well, I mean, I go back and forth all the time. It's not but a couple of hour drive. Now, when everything started, I pretty much from about March until March 2 years ago until May of this year. I mean, I'd spent only a couple of weeks here at the house in Charlotte. I just stayed up on top of the mountain. But now I'm here about 50-50. But it's not a big deal to run back and forth. But it's surrounded by Christmas tree farms and yet have a fiber optic connection. I mean, what more do you want from life?
I, um, I don't know. I kind of feel that's a weird kind of hell. I'm not sure. I think for me that would be a weird kind of hell. I mean, it's amazing. In one sense, it's amazing. Like the incredible thing about today is, like, you're in Charlotte. I'm in Canmore, Alberta, Canada, and we're having just a straight conversation. Now, some things aren't perfect. I can't make eye contact. You can't see all your.
Well, actually, if I line up the camera right, but since I'm ripping the studio apart, trying to redo all the lighting and everything in here, trying to get ready to do a whole bunch of workshops. The office is a disaster area, and the mounting for the camera is somewhere around here.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Somewhere in the disaster area.
Yeah, something like that, right? No, I just, but the cool thing is we have this conversation. But the other thing is, I just realized like our whole society would literally end right now if someone figured out a way to turn all the lights out. It'd be over, like that.
Funny you mentioned that. I'm working on in two universes that are both apocalyptic. One of which is if everything goes to hell and goes wrong, what does it really look like? And from a DR type perspective, it's not okay. It's Tuesday, everything went to hell. Thursday's Mad Max. It's not the way things work, and so we're working on that project, and then working on another co-authoring project with somebody where we're playing around with doing a lit RPG disaster universe where we're just gonna screw everything up and kill everybody.
Screw it. Just everybody does. Everybody.
I've spent too much of my career doing disaster recovery planning and what real disasters look like. So it's like, okay, yeah. So, oh yeah, lights went out. All right, here's the numbers, and this is what starts ticking when and where, and that. But all that stuff gets really depressing really quickly unless you have that really sick and twisted sense of humor, and you're like, all right, let's start taking odds.
Well, I have a feeling. while some things wouldn't happen right away, and I think some communities would be okay, it would get really bad in large places really quickly, right? It's just really bad, right? So I, I, uh, so I did it. So my next release after this one, I'm writing and drawing. It's the idea is instead of sending someone to prison, you turn their lights out, you turn all their access to technology away for 30 days, almost like a prison sentence, because it's a much more cheaper, efficient way of punishing somebody. So in one dose like that, you could really wreak havoc with somebody because you completely take away everything they knew and loved. But if you did that to everybody at once, I mean, I thought about that when I was writing the books. Like, if this happened literally today, everybody it happened. That would be it. Like, I'd be going to the mountains somewhere. I'd be like, hopefully not during this time of year. Like maybe during the springtime, start growing some stuff because like this ain't gonna come back to normal anytime soon.
No, and I mean when you start doing research and going down rabbit holes for a lot of those kinds of things, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes very quickly, and it's like, well, what happens if we return back to? And this is one of the things we're playing with in the book is, well, what happens if the disaster returns us to the year 2000? What changes? Okay, well, what if it backs us up to 1980? What technology works, what doesn't? What if we're now, but this area of the country is now sitting in 1850? No power, no internet, no this, that, the other. And it's an interesting exercise to go through as to what areas could be devastated based on what kind of a cause and what does recovery look like. And it's an interesting exercise to go through to see, kind of how things could play out.
Yeah, it really, really is. So we're not going to go too deep into this, but our current time, in my opinion, is almost like a setup to the. I feel like we've kind of come to the end of life as we know it. I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like exactly, but the longer this goes on, the more I just kind of realize we're not going back to what we thought normal was. I think the question of what normal is going to be is up in the air, but I don't know if we're ever going to go back to quote unquote normal again.
Well, I mean, this is not the first time that even in modern times, our culture has gone through a pandemic. I mean, the last major one to come, that cut through the Western world, of course, was 1917 flu that devastated a lot of people and was actually even more deadly than World War One.
Yeah.
But it's by no means, and honestly, and this is the fun part of this is not the pandemic we've been planning for.
No.
We've been, I mean, for the last 30 years of some of the stuff I've been involved in and working on, we've been looking towards and planning for a bird flu that would have much higher mortality rates, infectiousness rates, all that kind of stuff gets really interesting really quickly. But a lot of what we've been planning for was actually a bird flu. When SARS-1 came through in 2003, 2004, whatever that was, it's hard to remember back then. I was actually supposed to go to Hong Kong for a couple of weeks to meet for a business project and things that were going on. Right in the middle as that hit, and it was like, yeah, no, I'm not, no. And we watched how that cycled and burned through. Which the good part of it is a lot of research that came out of that is partially where some of the vaccines and things we were able to develop so quickly came from now, is because that research has been actively going on for 15 years. It wasn't like they had to start from scratch, start from ground zero. It was pretty well tried and tested technology that was able to be rolled out and used. But yeah, I mean, but when you talk about we're never going back to what it was before, we're never going to go back to what it was before, but we never do. I mean, even take away pandemics. Look at what things were in 2000. Early days of early stage internet, the browser wars and whatnot. But for the most part, personal computing technology was very different. You did not have things that anything like what you have now. I was on some of the early DSL stuff, but I mean, even going back to think about pre-computer days. I mean, when I went to college in the dark ages, I was one of two people in the dorm that had a computer. And I was, working in technology and things like that. And everybody was like, well, what are you going to do with that thing? I'm like, make money. And I did.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we look at how college was then, and then my sister, who's 10 years younger than me, when she was going through 10 years later, it was you had to have one,
Mhm.
and I mean, so, and it wasn't quite to the you have to have one and everybody's got a laptop. But if we look at anything and everything as rapidly as technology evolves and grows and builds and things like that, we have had much more happen in the last 20 years than probably the last 300.
Oh, easily, easily. Last 40 years, probably. I would probably go as far back as around 1995, when a lot of stuff was really starting to evolve. But if you go back from 1995 to today, you can literally watch knowledge doubled at an incredible rate, and it's even faster today than no one can keep up with it. No one can keep up. There are, I think the neatest thing about today's time is we currently have 8 billion people on the planet that each can literally go into their own little nook and cranny of the universe and discover all kinds of information, data that people either aren't aware of, have forgotten, and you can develop brand new ideas, right? Literally, and anybody can do that. I think that's the greatest gift of today, right? But
Communication. I mean, this joyous little device right here, there we go, that way.
tricord, yes.
There's more power in this than NASA had to get people to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
There's more NASA in this thing, or more tech and computing power and memory and everything in this little device right here than governments had 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the capabilities here that are in this device in my hand, and if you look at things that you're now able to do with the infrared sensors and all the stuff that are built into the cameras, it absolutely is a tricorder.
Oh yeah, in every way.
You can do broad spectrum stuff if you've got the right software loaded onto them. What you can do with what's in that piece of technology is astounding.
Mm-hmm. I literally decided as an experiment just to see what kind of apps I could find. And there's literally an app for everything. But the only thing our phones can't do yet, and I almost expect they'll be able to do this down the road. You remember how the Dr. Crusher could literally sometimes run a scanner and repair tissue?
Mm-hmm.
We're not there yet, but I could see it in the next 5 years. Like I mean, it's that I do think the technology has come that far, and the rate we're doubling, like I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility.
Well, there is some interesting stuff going on with light therapy and tissue regeneration and being able to do things with synthetic skin and synthetic matrices and things like that. Yeah, I mean, we're getting much, much, much closer.
Yeah, and not to mention magnetic developments, and light therapy's been going on since the 30s. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just like the idea, like it's not been like it like some of this stuff, some of these ideas we're playing with today have been around.
For
Yeah,
100 years.
yeah, easy, right? Maybe longer in some cases, actually. But it's just one of those things where everybody has access.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I've asked this question, like we've come to a very interesting point where communication and technology has outgrown the infrastructures we currently live in. And I think by and large, there are some things that we still need, but if you really sit there and think about just where everything is, the possibilities of what's going on out there, I think what I'm expecting, like if I were to predict the future a little bit, I do see a big divergence of people kind of going into their own little niches and corners of the universe because that's kind of what everybody's been doing anyway. Publishing industry is a niche and corner thing. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if I'd ever want to work for the big five. And I'm strictly on a business level. I don't know anymore if there are uses, but if you build your own audience, that gets trickier.
There's and this is one of those things I actually get into and have been pulled in to talk about a lot is the business side of publishing.
Mhm.
We probably didn't do a real good intro when I came in, now did I?
No, no,
Uh,
no, 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 you didn't. No, we really, really, really didn't. But that's okay. So why don't you do your official title for everybody to see and hear?
oh, that's a dangerous thing, depending on
I
which
know it
way.
is a very dangerous thing.
So I am Jim Nettles, James P. Nettles. I write on the fiction side of the house: science fiction, urban fantasy, bit of horror, bit of contemporary. I just had a gothic horror come out, which is snarky because everything I write is snarky in some way, shape, or form. Right now, I am waiting on a release date for uh, a piece I did in We Folk, Fairy Folk in Film, which is a collection, and I doubt I'll ever be published with as many PhDs are in this book ever again. But it's about essays about fairy folklore in film in non-traditional ways. And so Joshua Cutchin, the editor, is a friend of mine, and he was looking for a couple more people to fill the last couple of slots. And I said, "What are you looking for?" He says, "Will you send me a piece?" And I said, "Sure." So I shot it over to him, and I sent him a list of proposals, and the first thing on the list was Dune, the 1984 version of Dune. And he says, "There is no way you're going to tell me that Dune is fairy folklore." So for a 7,000 word piece, I sent him a 1,400 word proposal. And he says, "Okay, I just have to see it just to see it." There's So then I sent him a piece that was about 10,500 words for my 7,000 word article. And I was like, "So where you want me to cut?" And he goes, "No, no, no. Beef this up, beef this up. Oh, and did you know this?" So by the time I was done, my 7,000 word article is about 14,000 in the book. It is supposed to be released here shortly. I have not seen it come up yet.
That's awesome.
But
That's
so I also am an author. I also write nonfiction. I do a lot of stuff in privacy, technology, entrepreneurship, business. I have written. I actually got my start in media a long time ago. So the first things I ever got paid for were actually articles. I started as a photographer, and they were like, "Yeah, if you're going to go take the pictures, write the stories too." So when I started out in college, I mean, the things I wanted to cover, I would go cover anything. So I mean, I covered astronauts, I covered politics, I covered, I went to dinner with Timothy Leary. There was this whole list of just bizarre things that all happened because it was like, okay, I'll go cover the story. Um, and so there was this long list of people I got to meet, and I started playing with fiction. But I mean, for the most part, I was writing articles, political articles. I've covered sports. I've covered a whole bunch of different things um, over the years. My main profession is in business and technology consulting work. So I do a lot of technology strategy work. I do a lot of that kind of geekdom. And on the side of it, I kept writing. I kept doing fiction, nonfiction, stuff like that. And I get pulled into doing copywriting. I've done email campaigns. I've done ghostwriting. If there's words in there somewhere, I've probably played with them. And about one of the things I've done throughout a lot of my career is I've taught a lot of classes around business ownership and entrepreneurialism and technology. All this sort of stuff for people starting stuff up or in growth modes and things like that. And about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of mine came to me and was like, "Hey, got a question." "Sure." Because you're one of those weird business techie kind of people, right? "Yeah, yeah." So they asked a question. I laid something out for them. And they went and said, "That all sounds really important. I have no idea what the hell you just said, but it sounded really good." And that devolved into I started writing stuff because I was putting stuff on Quora and writing stuff for Entrepreneurial Man, all these sorts of things. So if I had something I could easily adapt to the publishing industry, I would. And I would shape the articles, restructure them. And then it was like, well, I got lazy and was like, all right, I'm just going to throw up a website and I'll start posting them all out there. The next thing was sitting at the bar with Dr. Ben Bova. And he's like, "So when are you going to turn this into a book?" And I said, "Funny you mentioned that. I've been working on that and playing with that." And kind of went through a few machinations, played with the agent route, which goes back to that idea of the big five. And I'm like, look, I want to do these workshops. I want to do all of these other moving pieces with it. Nobody wanted to touch anything but a book. And I'm like, it's going to take more than that. And so a couple of years ago, in fact, about almost 3 years, well, about 2.5 years ago now, this wound up, if I can get it out from underneath the stack of hard drives, that wound up becoming this book. And I do a lot of conventions, I do a lot of speaking, I do a lot of gigs. So when I wrote that book, it was meant to be okay, here's the fundamentals. I had the benefit of a lot of friends of mine in the business that helped me hammer it down and reshape it and really bring it down to a true, just sort of core level book. I'm working on the second numbers 2 and 3 in that series. We've got a whole series of books that are lined up for it. And I also teach a lot of workshops. Well, out of all of that, I started a company called Author Essentials that is a small services company, niche services, but it's primarily geared around education. And right now we're in the process of moving all the classes and stuff. And I'm lined up to teach basically about 15, 16 workshops over the next about 2.5 years that we're recording. We're going to be releasing. Some of them already done and released. We also have some other people that are coming in for the company to do this. Well, Elle Marie Wood is a friend of mine, and she came because we were talking about doing some classes for it, and we had a conversation, and it was like, well, I said, AE is really designed to be about the business stuff and classes you can't find anywhere else. I'm not interested in really putting out stuff that I'm not going to say I'm not interested, because I am. But if there are classes and lots of places you can go to get craft and find that, I would much rather people be able to go find that and do those things. There are certain areas of craft we play with and do for retreats and workshops. But my main focus was on teaching creatives how to profit from their work. Because one of the biggest things that always comes up is everybody's like, well, how much money can you make? And it's like, well, how creative can you get? And the number one problem, and it's not just creatives, every entrepreneur faces this problem at some point earlier on, is you can hit that thing that says you feel guilty about making money from work. You can hit this thing where you feel like this, oh, well, yeah, but that doesn't take but 5 minutes, and I can do that for a friend. I do it all the time, and it's a conscious decision when I do it. But other bigger things is like, no, that's a contract. That's something where we're going to engage in a business relationship. We're going to do these things. And so that's what we started with that workshop company. Well, when Elle Marie came and we started talking that through, that's where it was like, okay, let's go build your own thing, which is now the Speculative Fiction Writers Academy. I'm the business track director. A lot of the classes and things that we do for AE, we're taking a subset of that and putting it over on the path and track for the Spec Fic Academy. Because, again, everything that's happening there for me is really in line with my personal goals. I really believe that we're coming into another age where, and we're seeing some of it right now where the industry is trying to shape itself out. If we take publishing alone, the publishing industry is in trouble and has been in trouble for a while. And if we look at the technology companies that have come about in the last 30 years, I mean, if you look at Amazon as a technology company, not as a sales company, not as a giant online department store, really look at Amazon as a technology company, because that's where they make their money. It's not about the fact that they shipped, going along the lines of stuff that I'm working on here in the office and the new lighting. It's not they sent me this little connector kit today. It's the matter of the technology, the amount of data that they handle and control, the profiles they get to build, the fact that they can ship and move products and books and all the other things that they do gives them tremendous amounts of data. It's let them build infrastructures that are extraordinarily profitable. Oh, yeah, and we'll move products too.
Yeah. So just on that note, I worked for a shipping company. So I dealt with Amazon a lot. the amazing, technology is the perfect way to describe them, because what they figured out how to do, like their real like service slash technological brilliance, is they cut out a lot of the middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what they did. Like they came up with an innovative way to take the middleman out. So all these structures that were needed before, they annihilated. And the publishing industry, which still has a lot of those older systems still in place, is still getting annihilated by them. And that's why.
Well, and I mean, looking at the fact of Amazon is set to become the world's largest transport company, if not by the end of the year, first quarter of next year, with their fleet of planes, trucks, all the rest of this. They're set to be the world. I mean, they're setting to unseat FedEx, UPS, DHL, all of these companies, and doing it just for their own in-house stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I saw that
But
coming.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with the fleets of trucks and the way they're running that. But the publishing industry is still running in essence like it did in the 1800s. If you go to a bookstore, basically everything that's in there is on consignment. You know, it's not that the store has bought inventory that they're then responsible for selling. It's that a publishing company has come in and said, hey, yeah, we want to put books on your shelves. And if they don't sell, then you're either going to discount them or you're going to destroy them. And we're going to back those numbers out, which means that a publisher has to really have a good book launch, is spending a lot of money in books that may never sell. In fact, likely won't ever sell unless you have somebody who's got a name is like Stephen King or something like that, James Patterson, somebody who comes with this huge pre-built-in audience. Other than that, you come walking in and it's a crapshoot, because those are the guys that create the market, that create the industry, that keep the fuel going, that then allow for the next guy to make it. Because I mean, depending who you listen to, the good numbers for this are, you know, one out of 40 books is what pays for the other 39.
Mm-hmm.
A chunk of them will make money and pay for themselves and earn out, but they're not major earners. They're kind of breadwinners, bread and butter. They keep the lights on, and a lot of them are never going to sell. And a big part of the reason that they don't sell, especially in the environment we're in now, is the authors don't know how to go sell their own books.
Oh, I'll definitely speak on that with everybody I've interviewed over the years. There's a lot of that.
And you know, if one of the biggest things that I run into all the time is when you're talking to somebody and you look at them and they're like, yes, I'm a writer. I'm like, okay, that means you're a business owner. No, I'm a writer. No, you really aren't. Either A, you're a small business owner, or B, you're a hobbyist. There's nothing wrong with either one. But if your goal is to make a living as a writer, or if your goal is just to make some side money as a writer, you better run it like a business, because if you don't, odds are you're never really going to have it click. Now, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like for myself, I decided to become a freelancer so big difference. First time I kind of went freelance before I did some temp work here and there was from March to December, when I had saved up a bunch of my money, and I had to learn how to do the business, because I was approaching it like a business, but I had no freaking clue what I was doing. Right. And there's always a little bit of that learning curve. There always is. It doesn't matter who you are.
There's always a lot of that learning curve.
Oh yeah. Oh, it never stops. It never truly stops. But a lot of that's, and then one of the things though, I clicked the second time I went, I made more money in the last 6 months than I did the first year.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being, there's a couple of reasons. One, I'm a much more confident prick than I was a year ago. That helps. It really does go a long way. I cannot stress that enough. But the second part is, I know who I am. I know what services I provide. I also recognize, and this is something a lot of writers don't think about. A lot of writers just think about the book.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, one of the other ways publishers stay alive is movie rights, merchandise. This is a business of reselling your stuff over and over and over and over again. You want to keep creating content, but like my current book launch, do you know what I care about? I don't care. I mean, I want as many sales as I can. I'm definitely going to be doing promotion and stuff like that. But what I'm really doing is I'm building a catalog. My
Mhm.
real business is going to be taking what I've created and putting this in other streams. That's going to be where I really make my money at this, right? Or selling rights to other places in the world. If a publisher does come and I do want to work with them, they are going to pay me to do it because honestly, why would I do it? Otherwise, why would I do it? And I'm again, I'm thinking of this like not about awards, recognition, permission. Fuck that shit. Pay me. I'm a business.
No, I mean, and that's here's one of the things that I teach, and I have taught this for a plethora of different people in different spaces. There's an extraordinary correlation between people in healthcare and publishing, because there's this idea of I want to share with the world. I have a message I want to give. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do the other. And even fiction, the most horrifying piece of horror or romance or whatever it is, that audience is finding a value in that and a benefit out of that, that you deserve to be paid for that. And part of the reason for that is you've brought value and benefit to somebody's life. You've brought them some experience. You don't know what that helped carry them through at a given time. It may have been killing time. It may have just brought some enjoyment, or you may have written that piece that really touches somebody. And at the end of the day, we kind of joke about this, but it's true. People will spend $5 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and then go complain about 99 cents for a book that was spent months or years to be done and developed, and the work that goes into it, copy, editing, covers, everything else. Yeah, and this is something that they'll read and enjoy for hours or days or even potentially longer, and come back and reread in the experience. And one of the things I spend a lot of time talking about is, as a business owner and as a creative, you have to spend your time that this is the time creating. This is me building my product. This is me doing this, this, and this. Then I'm going to take off that hat, because now I've got to take my darling, my baby, the thing I poured love, heart, sweat, tears, blood, frustration, lost time, lost nights, everything else in. Now I got to go sell it to make benefit out of that, or at least have it pay for itself. And what people don't see is the idea that your first book's not going to make you money. Your second book is not going to make you money. Your fifth or sixth starts to make you money because you can sell your tail. You've proven that you're going to be around and continuing to write and develop and improve your skills and improve your storytelling, improve everything else. You've now got stuff that, as you find more readers and more followers, you've got a back catalog for them to go to. You've got greater opportunity to be found and discovered. You've got greater opportunities for these things to happen. So there's a lot of it that is the truth of sit, butt, and cheer, and go write and go do things. Go meet people. That's the business side of things.
Mm-hmm. And,
Doesn't
and
mean,
sorry, finish.
well, it doesn't mean you can't love and hate the creative side of the output and the work you're doing, but you got to be ready to separate the two.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one of the big things is like one of the dirty little secrets of publishing. They love classics. You wanna know
Mm-hmm.
why they love classics? Because they have them and they always will have them. They don't have to work at it. People will buy them, even if right. There's always a first time for somebody. The big thing, publishers, what they're really selling isn't the new guy, although they want the new guy to do well because that just helps. But what they're really selling is every time I release something from this publisher, now I have to look. I can look back to everything else they've done before. It's true with my podcast. I have 691 episodes. You can find a good chunk of them on my YouTube. If you want to find more out about me, you can do that. I have my audio, which you can definitely find me there. You have my books, which you can support me there. You have my merchandise, which can support me there. Every time I do something, it isn't even so much about the front end, it's the back end I care about. That's what I truly give a crap about. I don't care about the front as much as I care about the back.
Well, this is the beautiful thing of intellectual property is, and this is where there's some, and right now I'm working on an updated class on, I'm going to be teaching about intellectual property, which is why it's probably more in the front of my mind. But this is one of the beautiful things around IP is that it is a product of the mind, but something you can profit from or exploit or use or share in so many different ways that that's where the real benefit is. There's a lot of talk right now about is copyright outlaw or copyright law outdated. The answer is yes, in many ways. But with people that are out there crying right now about, oh, we'll just abolish copyright law, everything should be free. I don't think that they understand that the moment that that happens, how much the world would come to a screeching halt.
Mm-hmm. Everything's IP, and I mean
Everything.
everything is IP, and it's the last true. Like if you're talking about like making big money, it's intellectual property. It is one of the biggest 2 or 3 areas in the world where money that is always going to be, and because it doesn't just apply to books, it applies to medicine. Scaringly, food, even right, even food to some degree. You make it all free. Oh boy.
I mean, and I think one of the things that people don't know is how tight the margins are on so many of these businesses. But I mean, kind of going back to, because I grew up in a weird blend. I grew up in a blend of small business and politics, and my mother was an English teacher. So I grew up around all of this. I mean, and so I grew up understanding money doesn't work the way people think it does.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up knowing that there's that thing of owning a business means that you actually have way more opportunity than you will working for somebody else. If you're working for somebody else, there's a certain degree of comfort there. There's a certain degree of stability, but it's all an illusion. Because especially now in where we're at, you know, nobody stays anywhere long enough to build anything anymore. And I mean, I've owned my own businesses, still do. I've worked for other people, still do. I'm at my best when I am doing my thing, working for myself and whoever it is I'm serving. And I think this is the thing is keeping in mind if you own a business or in things like that, or consulting or freelancing, you're giving services to somebody, you're serving someone else and their interests, and both of you should profit from that activity.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if both of you are not profiting from that activity, somebody's not doing it right.
Yeah, and so, like some of that's tricky. Like I do podcast services, so one of the things they tell me it's like, how do you grow an audience? It's like, well, you got to have a plan on how you do your podcast. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm starting to see the numbers I'm starting now. It took me 7 years to get there. It's not a quick process, right? It just took a lot of me going out there and making an ass of myself on a regular basis until finally people said, he's actually good at what he does. But it's open doors too. My skills are transferable. I'm working next to it. I do another show for a corporate entity because I'm good at this show, right? That's why they did it. So I've opened doors. So I'm working for people, but I'm also still working for myself. I'm still trying to make this more profitable in other ways because I just see all these opportunities that are right in front of me.
Well, and I mean, I was already working on it for AE, building a small media network that we were going to use for AE, for business services, podcast, video stuff. And when all the pandemic came down, friends of mine that we do a lot of stuff together, John Hartness of Falstaff Books, Gail Z. Martin, a couple of other friends of ours, had been listening to me talk about doing some of the virtual stuff for a number of years. And Gail pings me, and they were on vacation sitting at Disney, and everything just got locked down. So she's like, okay, I did a thing. What do we do next? Well, her I did a thing was we had a logo
So,
and a name, but we had a logo.
so, so,
3 weeks later, we dropped our first 2 shows. And we the first one was the panel room. The second one was hot off the press. We are hitting show number 100 of the panel room somewhere in the next couple of weeks. where we just dropped number 61 of Hot Off the Press. But in the first, since April of last year to now, we've done, and I've lost count. We're pushing about 400 shows. We've got, and we've got 8 different shows running right now. We're getting ready to add a few more. But we've got, still doing Panel Room, Hot Off the Press. We do a special event show. We just did we're doing a bunch of holiday shows right now, which are mostly us being jackasses. We've had about 400 guests plus on so far. I've lost count because right now the jackass that's in charge of the tech, that would be this jackass, is behind on the next round of website updates because we're building and migrating a bunch of stuff, starting the new mailing list and newsletter stuff out of that. We've got a show that is an hour with, which is an hour-long interview with New York Times bestsellers, USA Today bestsellers, people that have been in the business for forever. We've started a comics track, the comics layer. We've got 2 different fandom tracks. We've got a generic fandom track, which is all sorts of different stuff. We've got one that is all Supernatural, the TV show based. We have covered, we've done a ton of different genres. We started out, speculative fiction. It was fantasy, horror, epic, urban fantasy, sci-fi. We spread out into romance. We spread out into mystery. We spread out into all these different areas. And, we've been slowly but steadily building an audience. We've not lost audience at all. Right now it's only on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Doing some things to expand that right now. But I mean, and it's called the Continual Convention. And we've put out a ton of content, and it's all, all of us that put it together. It's Gail Martin, John's in the background. We bring in a lot of Falstaff authors, obviously, but we work with a number of different publishers as well as a lot of indies. Jean Marie Ward, I mentioned earlier, Jeannie Adams, Nancy Northcott. El Marie is part of our programming committee. We've got a couple other people. You'll see Jason Tondra on there who moderates a lot of panels. He's a great, and for us, he's a great voice of the reader because he's still, even though he's got some business career in the business, he's still working on trying to get his first book published. So he's out there as the voice of the reader. He's out there as the voice of the author trying to learn. And
he's your Percival.
Yeah. I mean, and so he's almost the narrator for the audience. Does a great job of it. We've got a couple of other people. So we've got a small team that runs wide open, kind of crazy. We spend 2 hours once a week in a programming committee meeting. But we've built a pretty nice, solid network that's continuing to grow. I do a lot of stuff over with Joe Compton and the Go Indie Network. We do crossover stuff with Joe. What we've been able to do, it all came out of the most important thing that happens in business. Who are the friends you make? What's the network you build? Who are the people that you can get stuff together? Because none of these things would be happening if we didn't spend time together otherwise. I mean, part of the reason Speculative Fiction Academy is around is because, working with Lisa and some of the other stuff we were doing, I was like, all right, this seems like a good idea. Let's go build it. Here's what it's going to take. It's work. It's fun, but it is a shitload of work.
Oh God, yeah. No, we're just getting started. Like, it's going to be probably about another year before all of us are starting to really see what we want out of it. Probably at some point next year, I'm going to do another course. So, like, I'm going to take podcasting kind of to the next thing, right? For everyone listening, ladies and gentlemen, I have a podcasting 101 course on there. It's just a basic intro to how to get into this. I do a lot of cool stuff, show some cool stuff. But I mean, like, talking about bigger things, like measuring your audience, understanding how to actually build a show, right? It's still storytelling. Like, I think going back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of authors just wanting to write, I think the thing that always befuddles me with that is marketing storytelling. Even business in itself is basic storytelling. Who are you? What do you stand for? Why do I care? That's an elevator pitch.
I mean, one of the things that comes up frequently is everybody's like, well, how do I sell more books? Okay, well, do you know who your reader is? Do you know who your customer is? And those two may not be the same thing, because right now we're producing a children's book for somebody, and I'm like, the parent or the grandparent or somebody that buys the book may read it to the kid, but they're not the primary reader audience. But it all boils down to this. And one of the things that I preach, and right now the first class that I've got up over on the SFA is, well, you got to listen to me for 5 hours, but it's not all one class. It's the Business Essentials class that's based out of the book I held up. It's that, and expands on a lot of the different areas, but it goes to the 5 fundamentals of business. But one of the things I spend a lot of time on is ethical sales and marketing. And notice that first word, ethical. Ethical sales means that you're taking the time to educate somebody on who you are and what you do, and leading them to a buying decision for themselves. Notice I didn't say you're forcing them to buy something. I didn't say you're huckstering it. You're leading somebody to make what is the right choice for themselves. And we're talking books here for the most part. So if somebody buys a book they don't like, that's not life altering, that's not life ending. But if you sell them something that's the right thing for them, it can be. Even in fiction. I mean, think about look at some of the major fandoms that are out there. Look at even how some of the unknown works have touched, you. I mean, that you can't be a writer without being a major reader.
Absolutely.
I mean,
like one of the books that definitely touched me as a kid was Fahrenheit 451. It was like one of the first books I read. It scared the shit out of me. It's one of the only books that's ever done that. And mine again, Lights Out. It's a homage. I'm openly admit this. It's a homage to Bradbury. It really is. I'm not even gonna lie about that, right? I don't pretend to be as good because I'm not Ray Bradbury, but still, I mean, yeah, you're gonna write about the stuff you care about, and the magic of the world, questioning, exploring the darkest and lightest parts of the human condition. That's Ray Bradbury in a nutshell. How can you not love that guy? Right?
I mean, I've got an original copy over here of course I just went blank. Yes, Martian Chronicles. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
I've got
my other favorite book. My other favorite book from him.
I have a full unabridged Stranger in a Strange Land on the shelf right behind me.
That is such an interesting book. I am 50-50 on that book. I read it when I was in high school, and it was like, because Old Heinlein is awesome. Stranger's the border, because that's where Old Heinlein ends and New Heinlein begins. I'm not as crazy about New Heinlein as I am about Old Heinlein.
Stranger in a Strange Land was, ironically, other than a couple of short stories, was the first one of his big books I read. And I've read both the abridged version and the unabridged version. The unabridged version goes down wandering paths that have no relevance to the story whatsoever, but make the book oddly more, it creates the world for me as a reader, very different world. And it's a different story in an odd way that these things should not affect the story. And I pull it off the shelf every few years. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is still Good Omens. I mean,
that's a phenomenally great book. I read Ray Bradbury and Charles Soule first, or Neil Gaiman would be much higher on my list than he is. I think it's just who I read when I read. He's good. I will never deny that, but it just doesn't hit me the same way.
Well, I mean, I grew up reading a lot of my dad's, 50s, 60s sci-fi books. I mean, it was like, okay, grab the thing and off the shelf. And I read voraciously. I consume stuff across the board. But it is all about, what's the good storytelling that appeals to you and speaks to you? What is it that sucks you in? I mean, look at some of the modern, for good, for bad, for ugly. Take J.K. Rowling out of the picture. Look at the impact of Harry Potter as storytelling. Is it really all that creative and unique? Not really, but it's how it was executed.
It's one of those. It is incredibly smartly structured.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the thing about the Harry Potter series is every book follows a similar formula. Doesn't matter how big they are, how small they are, and she does a really good job of. And the stories all go through those arcs the exact same way. And even the last book, which does take the school by and large out of the story, still follows the same formula. It just does it in a different way, right? Because of the circumstances the characters found themselves, but it's still the same structure. She did a really phenomenal job with that series to write something that that had some really good appeal at the time, but also just fundamentally speaking, great storytelling. But
Mm-hmm.
nothing like comic book wise, Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, same thing. Nothing you've never seen before, but done so well by really
It's
creative people. Can't help but ignore them. You cannot ignore them.
it's extraordinarily well tuned, and it's been well done, well edited, and she just executes on it, the story, well. It built a fandom. Other things, 50 Shades of Grey.
Mhm.
The writing was not that great, but the writing hit on the right topic at the right time, and it found an audience. So I mean, it there's so many of these things here where it went out. If you go and hit, I mean, we're not even going to talk about Twilight, but again, it found an audience and brought people to reading, and it brought people to story. And I mean that is just as much about anything else in getting your career as an author is knowing who your audience is, knowing how to connect with them as best as possible. I'm teaching a class here in about a week and a half on creating your author business plan. And about an hour of that class is a very high level view of how to build your reader avatar. One of the other classes I teach is pretty much a full day of how you build a reader avatar, how you profile somebody, and then what to do with the data. I mean, it's a very data driven class, and it's very much about how you do the research. How do you profile them? How do you use what data? How do you structure it? But at the end of the day, it's, and this is exactly the same thing that Facebook and social media companies do. This is the same thing that Amazon does. It's learning how to profile someone to understand what will connect with them and resonate with them.
That's
Now,
what
as an author, you have to write and create those things that you love and you're passionate about. That's critical to it. Otherwise, everybody can tell that you didn't care. You wrote it for whatever reason. You just cranked it out. But the things that you love to do and write about and talk about and engage in, people can sense that in the reading and the emotion of it. But even so, you still got to be able to connect to the right audience. I mean, I have a lot of people come and go and say, okay, well, my Facebook ads did nothing, so Facebook's useless. No, you didn't tune it right to connect to the right audience. Or when they got there, when they got to your Amazon landing page, what you promised on the front end didn't connect to what you were selling them. And one of the hardest challenges we have to face as storytellers, sales is all a process of telling the right story. Do I have the right image to grab them? Do I have the right copy to grab them? And then am I living up to that commitment and what the reader picks up when they go through the sales process?
I would just add one more thing to that because I do agree with pretty much everything you just said. There's also one other element that's kind of there today that is more prevalent today than in the past. We have a chance to connect with authors directly. So, and the reality of the situation is whether an author wants to connect or not, it's part of the business too. So
Mm-hmm.
the other big thing about sale is and I'm going to mention the word relationship because
Mm-hmm.
that is that's the crux of the matter. People don't even necessarily remember books touch them, but it's not so much what you say in the book; it's how you make them feel. It's the same as being an author in front of. I'm not going to mention the comic creator by name. I remember just my first interaction with him. I just remember this, is someone I really admired reading growing up, and some of the books he edited too. He was an editor and writer. So I remember this. He asked on Facebook, how would you describe Castle? Right? I told him it's a modern day Murder She Wrote with like a boy meets girl story. Essentially, what I said, which it is. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what it is. He completely dismissed me. Completely blew me off until somebody else read my thing. Goes, no, he's actually right. That is actually a really good way to describe that. He goes, but Murder She Wrote was a bad show. Now, I don't think Castle's a bad show, but I wouldn't say it's a great show either. That's just my opinion. But again, I remember that interaction. So now, whether I like it or not, as much as I still like his material, I'm never going to separate the fact that he blew me off
Mm-hmm.
when that was my first actual impression of him.
I love doing conventions. I love meeting people. I do a lot of this stuff. What you see is really what you get.
Mm-hmm.
What I feel bad about sometimes at conventions, because it's really common for me to be stacked up on programming, is to look at somebody and go, love to sit here and chat, walk with me because I got to be on a panel in 5 minutes. I hate, and occasionally I've had to blow people off, and it's like, I really apologize. Got to be on stage. But at the same time, I also try to make myself very open. Because I would not go and do conventions if I did not love hanging out and talking to people and finding out what do they do, what do they got to say. Now, I will also run my mouth until hell freezes over. I know this about myself. But what again, kind of what you see is what you get. If you ask something, I may go on 87 different tangents, but we'll eventually get back around to whatever it was because there was probably something relevant in there somewhere. But social media has created a position where we have the ability to connect with people in a way we never have before. It's also created the expectation that we will connect with people like we never have before. But I think this is reasonable now because we have the technical capability. When I go to read somebody, I want to know who I'm letting in my head, because if I'm truly enjoying what I'm writing, whether it is fiction, whether it's nonfiction, whatever it is, if I get an idea of who that person is, you can see that personality coming through their writing, even if they change styles, change technique, change everything else. The core of that person is going to come through in their writing. And if they're writing something that's completely and totally incongruous with who they are, you can see that in the writing. If it's something that's completely and totally congruous with who they are, you can see that in their writing. A lot of the time, if I'm getting ready to go delve into something, and anymore, a lot of the fiction I read is by people I know. I mean, this is both the great part and the curse of having been in the business and getting to know people. It's like my to be read pile that's just friends is, this high. Never mind the stuff that I really want to go read as well and go to discover new things. And it was funny the other night we were recording a show. I have talked for years about co-creation theory, that no matter how I write a story, no matter how I write an article, everyone is going to perceive it a little bit differently. It is a co-creation experience between me as the writer and you as the reader. And so I think it's reasonable to want to know, who am I trying to create an experience with? And I'm going to create an experience that I resonate with. Am I going to enjoy it, or am I going to learn from it, or am I going to get whatever the experiences I want from it? Am I going to get that from that person? And if I meet somebody that is an absolute jackass or somebody that I just can't do, then you're right, exactly right. There are a couple of authors I've met whose stuff I've read for years and was like, oh yeah, I can never read any of their stuff again. It's happened. But more often than not, when I meet somebody, it's like, oh crap, I got to go read their stuff because I like that human being.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
interviewed like a lot of people. It's really easy after a conversation for me to become a fan of the person. My curse is same as you. I got a giant pile because I'm never going to get to all of them as much as I want to, right? Because they're so good. I got a story from somebody in the email. I've been dying to read it, but I've been so wrapped up in my own stuff that it's been like I haven't had a chance yet. And so and like I said, there's people I really click with, and I think that's the majority of life is you will meet people you will just naturally click with, and it'll go great. And even people you don't click with anymore, that's
Mhm.
cool too. But it's all on how you treat people. That's the thing. I think it's all about how you treat people. I'm not going to be everybody's flavor. I already know this. I'm a very unique flavor of ice cream, and I'm okay with being the one with not tiger stripe because that's the one I it's like kind of go meh, but I don't mind being a rocky road or like I'll be somebody's ice flavor, a unique flavor of ice cream. I'm good with that. I also know that as people may outgrow me or people may really fall in love with me or both. That's the nature of the business. But at the same token, it's like I've learned this is a lot of authors do not realize this is it's not you got to be honest. I think the most important thing, I think that you got to be kind of whatever that authentic you is. You got to be that authentic person because there's no point in lying. You're gonna fail miserably or you're gonna be in hell. But at the same time, also do keep in mind most people when they approach you are earnest and honest. They're not
Mhm.
trying to do anything to you other than that earnesty and that honesty. So at least respond. Again, you can disagree. You can walk away, but there's an earnest, but again, never dismiss that earnesty and honesty anybody presents to you because it's going to impact how you see that person going forward.
Well, the truth of it is, people are going to tell you exactly who they are, and when they tell you who they are, listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, not everybody's going to like me or resonate with me, and I have long since come, to learn to live with that. I I have a bit of a gallows sense of humor. I'm more than a little snarky, but at the end of the day, and with friends, I can get kind of cutthroat. But it's never, I don't go for the mean spirited. I don't go for. I mean, I can be heartless, I think. But at the same time, I go for I am who I am, and if I can ever do anything, I'm always I try to live that life of service. I try to do more in the black than I do in the red,
Yeah.
and be a good human being, but don't piss me off. Um, it's kind of hard to do, but it can be done. And once I've stripped that switch, is like, yeah, nope, that's not somebody I'm gonna go take up
It,
my space. And doesn't happen often anymore. It takes up too much energy. But if it's somebody I don't like or don't, there's no value to me, there's no value to them, I'm not going to spend that time. I would rather spend my time with the vast majority of people. Somebody wants to spend time with me? Great. Let's sit down and chat in the bar. Let's sit down and hang out in the corner. Whatever. I love to do that. I mean, but my number one selling book, the one that has sold more than anything else. The reason that the shelves behind me are loaded up with gnomes is because of my little novella. It's a murder mystery where somebody's killing gnomes and turning them into garden statues. I get gnomes from all over the place, and they're like, "When's the next gnome coming out?" I'm like, "I'm working on it. I got two more in the works, I promise." But I mean, it's that little book, and it's hysterical. It was 100% tongue in cheek. It's told straight, but it's 100% tongue in cheek. And but if you get that sense of humor, then you know what you're going to get. And I mean, that's the people that I'm looking for. And I mean, even when I'm writing serious articles, there's still going to be something snarky in there somewhere. And I know it's part of my literary signature. I can live with that.
well, yeah. I mean, I like again as something I've learned now that I've done 6 books. I like absurd stuff that sneaks up on you and makes you think. That's what I like to do. So I want to leave people with a certain sense of open mindedness and maybe a little bit of a sense of humor and just go along for the ride. That's who I am. That's who my readers are going to be.
Well, I mean, it was funny because at Jordan Con, I think it was this summer, in Atlanta, we're sitting there, and just a bunch of us sitting there talking and hanging out and BSing and stuff back and forth. And a friend of mine, they took a vote and decided that I was a Loki variant. I had not seen the show yet at that point in time. They all decided I was a Loki variant. It's like, okay, I'm not a variant. If anything, I'll take the original title, but okay, whatever. So I'm on the way home, headed to home, and I call my sister and I'm like, hey, got a question for you. She goes, yeah. I said, they took a vote and decided I was a Loki variant. And she goes, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to need a little bit more here. She goes, have you not seen the show yet? I'm like, no. She goes, well, what the hell have you been doing? I said, I've been busy. She goes, don't worry about it. My entire team took a vote and decided I was a Loki variant too. Just get over it. It's a family trait. So I was calling a friend of mine just before Dragon Con. Are they over here? Where are they at? So I called a friend of mine just before Dragon Con. And I said, hey, apparently they took a vote. So he shows up to Dragon Con and brings me these. So I have my own set of horns now.
So now what you need is just go full scale, like Loki Viking. Get like one of those like horns to drink your mead from, and then just cause chaos and mayhem.
It's on that shelf up there.
Okay, there. Okay, you're set. You're all set. You're all set.
Okay, the other side, I do Scottish heavy athletics. I teach people to throw heavy objects and heavy people. So yeah, I've got a drinking horn. There's a reason I spend a lot of time in a kilt. Other than the fact it's just comfortable.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
No, I mean, and that oddly enough kind of accidentally became part of my convention brand because I spend a lot of time in a kilt anyway. I'm comfortable in them. And that accidentally became part of my convention brand because that's what I was always doing anyway. I was like, yep, in a kilt, obnoxious t-shirt, something. I have friends that I've known for years that if I'm not kilted up, especially at a convention, but if I'm not kilted up, will not recognize me until I open my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like Superman's glasses. It's a great thing to have. But yeah, but knowing who I am is going to tell people, do I want to read their stuff? Do I want to let them in my head? Because again, I'm out there. I write fiction because I enjoy it. It keeps my sanity or insanity, such as the case may be, and it continues to sell, and I for which I'm grateful and thankful. And people keep asking me to write stuff. I mean a novelette I wrote for an anthology that came out apparently is going to become a collection of stories in that universe. And again, it was gothic horror, snarky gothic horror, but it's gothic horror.
Yeah, I know. I get you. I totally do. No, at the end of the day, man, you are who you are. It sounds to me like this whole conversation. Usually I sometimes I give advice to people. I don't really think I need to tell you shit. You know who you are. You know what to do. It basically you just keep doing what you, and you'll be fine, right? You're very at peace with yourself, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, most of the time. Then occasionally I'm like, yeah, who let me out of the box? But
yeah, nobody's perfect, man. Again, I'm younger. I'm a little younger than you. I'm old enough to recognize the fact that I'm coming to the point in my life where that desire to change those things to make myself better, I'm not going to say completely disappears, but you accept certain things about yourself as you keep getting older. And I'm going to be who I am going forward. And I thought about that. It's like, am I happy generally with who I am? Yeah. So if I got that, then I think that's the hardest part. Every once in a while, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to recognize that sometimes I'm an asshole. But you need to be an asshole in this life sometimes because it's how you, unfortunately, as is the other side of business, is you need to be a little ruthless every so often. But when you get right down to it, right, it's all about like one of the biggest like personal challenges are you okay with the person you see in the mirror? Even on the days you are an asshole. And if the answer is yes, you've done good.
Much like we said it, and so Hartness, for anybody who doesn't know, founded Falstaff Books, writes a number of different series of stuff. And John and I have been friends for years now, and have done a fair number of panels and stuff together as well, and other things like that. But we were sitting there at Dragon this year, and on a panel back and forth. But I mean, one of the things that we frequently talk about, you can be an asshole, don't be a dick. And I've had, what's the difference? I'm like, there's a huge difference. Being an asshole means that, you can be an asshole, which means but generally the people that are perceived as being an asshole, it is a matter of being self-aware and really knowing who you are and not giving two flying fucks if anybody else doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, nobody's ever going to, you're never going to make everybody happy. You're responsible for making sure you're happy. And you're responsible for making sure you do no harm along the way if you can help it.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not responsible for anybody else's happiness. Well, I try to with the wife because, but
I think, if you don't try with the wife, like I'll see you one of these days, it'll be like, what happened to you? And you're like, I fell down the stairs. Like, okay, I see. I see how that went out.
I can very honestly say that there are times that our house is more like spy versus spy than.
No,
But
it's totally true. How long have you been married?
we've been married for 8 years. We've been together for a lot longer than that, but we've been married for about 8 years.
Yeah, it
But I
makes sense.
mean, both of us come from we both traveled a lot. We've both done a lot of consulting work. She got out of IT and started a personal and professional development company about 8 years ago. Um, and so it's very much, there is a whole lot of stuff in our household that is all about being who you are and being, understanding who you are and what you're doing. Um, so that does make for some interesting things in our house, but at the same time, it's not uncommon sometimes for us to partner up and work on clients together or work on different things together. Um, but it, being aware of who you are and know that you always need to be working on that person. Because I think that's the one thing I would add to that is find the you're comfortable with. The hell with everybody else's opinion. First of all, start with find the you're comfortable with. Because if you are not comfortable with you, it is really hard as hell for anybody else to get comfortable. And at some point, it's really hard for anybody else to give two shits. Because either if you are not true to who you are, everybody also knows that. And frequently, our friends know who we are better than we do. Friends and family do. So it's always try to be working on that person that you are. And maybe that means you want to learn something. Maybe that means you want to try to become, and I hate to use this term because I think it's a bad term, but become a better person. I really regard that much more as who is the person you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the person, and it's not about how do you want to be perceived? What's other people's opinions? Who is it you want to be, and what is it that brings you joy and happiness in life? Because if you're happy and you're able to do things, for the most part, except for some sociopaths, happiness does come from what we're able to do together with other people. Even if that's just the friends you sit there and have, I mean, we just got past Thanksgiving. One of my biggest things is I love to cook every year. If you're not able to do those things that let you build meaningful friendships and relationships, then you are kind of still sitting in that place where you're not comfortable with who you are, which means it's hard for other people to be comfortable as well.
No, I totally agree with that. Like I said, I think as you get older, this is something I just have noticed with my family who are in their 60s and older. There's a point you kind of accept some things too, and I think that's healthy to some extent. But yeah, you always have to strive. Like you always, yeah, better person isn't the thing. A person willing to change and
Mm-hmm.
grow, whatever that looks like for everybody. Um, because
Growth is hard.
it's uncomfortable as hell. It's uncomfortable as hell because that means you're gonna have to acknowledge either usually a fear, an uncertainty, a flaw that you cannot run from anymore, and you have to look at it and be really honest about it. And I know what my flaws are. I know what I need to work on and am working on. Some days I win, some days I get my ass kicked. It's not about being perfect. It's just about that willingness to change, and that's a huge part of life. And as long as you have that, at least on some level, you'll be fine. You'll be by and large, we're all batshit insane. There's not one person that isn't crazy, but at least you can honestly say you did the best you can. And really, that's all anyone can ask of you at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, be a decent human being, or at least try to fake it.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a little too much of that in the wrong places in life. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not going to comment on that, but
Yeah. No, not today. It's not about that today. I think though. I think it's actually cool to actually really talk to you. Because we've passed each other in the night, but it's never been that we've never actually had a real conversation.
yeah, to sit down and hang out and chat like this. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I get to do this in person sooner than later. We'll see how crazy the world gets going forward. I get the feeling the crazy still, we're still in the middle of it. So that's I think, going to be that way for the next couple of years at least.
Yeah,
But
it's going to be interesting to see as it shifts from a pandemic mode to an endemic mode. I think we're seeing some indications of that finally.
yeah, no, I'm happy with that. Some things off here, maybe I talk about. I'm concerned about. I've openly said some things I'm a little worried about. Good on both ends of that equation, and but we'll see. Like I think, again, I think the biggest question in the next 2 years, because you mentioned it, we are changing. We always have changed, but I think because of the technology, because of the communication, because of the the fact that I think the structures are far outdated at this point, in more places than not. I think more than ever, I think the big question is going forward is who do we want to be, and I think that is the big question in the next couple of years.
Well, and I mean, again, this for me is really a big part of the reason I do a lot of the things that I do, is because I have spent a lot of my career automating things, implementing business intelligence, AI systems, looking for what are the things that honestly people could be, what people could be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've spent a lot of my career doing that, but at the same time, one of the things I've watched, even since going back to when I was in college, was the movement towards the day. And again, having grown up in small business, at some point, corporate entities can only get so large with so small a team. But there's a lot of other people out there that are not built for that mode. They're built to go either work for a small company or form their own company or do their own thing. I love the fact that we're in a gig economy. I love the fact that we're in
Yeah,
this new freelance world. I've been freelancing in some way, shape, or form since I was a teenager. Um, it,
I kick myself just a little bit that I didn't do this sooner. I did a little bit and I backed off, but again, you have to be ready for it too. I think the biggest thing I recognize too, that's a mindset. I
Mhm.
think like one of the things I'm going to say, like, for the majority of the generations ahead of me, not I don't feel you're in that ballpark, but for the majority of generations ahead of me, the idea of retirement, I mean, it's going to. I knew it was dying years ago. It's dead. I don't think people realize. I don't think it's fully sunk in yet. Like as we know it, at least, it's dead. What will replace it? That's one of those questions we, as a whole world, need to ask ourselves. But um,
well, for me personally, I think retirement is terrifying.
mm-hmm.
To me, retirement means I am absolutely only working on the things that I want to work on. I mean, my dad's about to turn 80. He still does consulting work.
Mm-hmm.
He still does a bunch of volunteer stuff. He's still in the middle of a bunch of things.
Yeah.
My grandmother was 96 running 500 lifeline units at 96 years old. Retirement is terrifying. Retirement, that idea of I'm going to just go sit and watch TV all day, I'd be dead in a week,
Oh
two at
God,
most.
I can't do it. Like even like I've been busier in the last. I now I go a little bit more at my own pace than I did working for a company. But the fact is, I'm doing a lot more of my hours in the day now than I ever did working for somebody. I love the work I'm doing a lot more because I'm actually having to use my head in ways I never imagined. I'm solving problems. I'm expanding what I'm capable of. I'm not retiring the same way. I already know this too. Like retirement as defined as the ideal, what retirement's supposed to be, what was advertised, and what it actually should be. Here's the thing: as I get older, I should be freer. Not more in debt, not more of this, not more of that. I should just be freer to come and go as I please. Because I've been around on this planet long enough. I've done my thing for God, King, and country. So you know what? I like this is about what I want to do, and that doesn't mean sitting on my ass watching TV. That means volunteering for causes I believe in, for working with people I want to work with, right? Doing things that are fun to me. In fact, I'm doing that now because again, I don't see it like that's what I see. Like I'm not going to live forever if I'm doing stuff because I have to do it. And every time we burden us culture with you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to do that, it tends to wreck shit. Like it tends to wreck the lifespans of whoever's having to do it. And one of the things I do truly believe in, although not necessarily working for a job, is worship. Work in itself is worship. What you do, what purposes you set for yourself, that is what keeps you. That's a big part of what keeps you going in this life.
I mean, purpose is important. I mean, and this is one of those things that really bothers me is the number of people I see that really don't have purpose. They have, or what their purpose is. You know, I'm not placing a value judgment because it's not my call. I don't have to live it. I don't have to do it. I don't have to deal with it. But if your purpose is entirely based about get up, go to work, come home, have dinner, watch TV for a couple of hours, get up and do it all over again. Yeah, there's a certain machination there that we have to go through of making a living, you know, paying the bills, taking care of the stuff that needs to be taken care of. You know, and does everybody love their job? Nope. Even if you have a job you love, do you love everything about it? Nope. Because there's still work that has to be done to make things happen. And if you're going to have your own business, you're going to have your own company, there is stuff about that is an extraordinary pain in the ass. There is some stuff about it that is extraordinarily terrifying because, and especially if you have other people depending on you. If you own a business and you have other people that depend on you to make a living, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of responsibility. Even if those are just freelancers that come in and work for you and you're helping to cover part of their living, mm-hmm. There's a great sense of responsibility that's there. And even if the only person you're responsible for is yourself, you're a solopreneur, you're running, you know, you're an author, you're just doing your thing. Having that pure responsibility and knowing that you've got to get the work done to pay the bills, you've got to go write the books, you've got to do the marketing, you've got to do all these other moving pieces. Because writing the books, getting them done, getting them edited, and getting the products done is maybe a third of the business. Mm-hmm. Until you get to the point where you can actually hire some people to do the other stuff so that you can be the one doing only the things that only you can do. And then unfortunately, when you're more of a control freak like me, you're like, oh, good God, I just go do this.
Well, no, so like, my dad has that issue. His business would be a lot bigger if he hired more people. That's just, I can see it from the outside looking in. It would, the control freak wins almost every time. And because of that, it's like, you're only going to get so big on your own. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, I as much as nobody makes it on their own, everybody, like people that are successful have a hell of a support network, whether it's just people interacting with them. You never do it on your own, ever, right? Even people who think they've done it on their own, they haven't. No. Even if you're right, it's more a team effort than people realize. And once you realize that, it's like you work better with people than without. Finding the right people, which is a monumental challenge. That might be the biggest pain in the ass of all, actually. But once you have them, the world's yours.
And the other thing is finding, and it's not just about the people you work with, it's also every group of entrepreneurs I know that are really strong and successful. It's based off of their network. They're people they sit around and talk like this, and have very frank, open conversations, and they get together frequently. I mean, there's a couple of groups that I have done stuff with many times over the years. You get together every week. You sit around and, I mean, and if it's a writer's group, you're sitting there talking writing and books and craft and Thanksgiving and all the friends and family type of stuff, but you spend some time talking about the craft and hammering out your books and getting the work done. Or if it's publishers, you're sitting around with small publishers, hanging out, you're talking, you're looking what's working for you, what's working for you. Because there's this misnomer that business is competitive. There is competition about who's going to buy the product, but at the end of the day, the most productive and the most successful guys are the ones that will tell you they have their network of people. You may not know who they are, you may not know who they sit around and talk. They sit around and talk. They all know each other. And I mean, the publishing industry is way smaller than I think anybody really understands that it is. I mean,
both. I will say it is and it isn't. Where it isn't, I totally see where you say where it isn't because, okay, like I'm just gonna just mention Joe because you mentioned Joe Compton. We spent 2 hours after a podcast he was on just talking about professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. Someone might just say, that's not business. Like, no, it is. It's bonding. Mm-hmm. Me and Joe are going to be working on stuff down the road together, and when that day does come, it's going to be because of the bonds we form here.
I mean, Joe and I will get on the line and talk for an hour, 2 hours, and BS and. Mm-hmm. But and we talk about, what are you working on? What are you doing? What's working? What's not? But we also, I mean, we sit there and shoot the shit. But I mean, Joe and I finally got to meet together in person for the first time at Multiverse in Atlanta a couple weeks ago. And I mean, it was just like, all right, brothers, and it was like, all right, great. We got a big hug and it was like, all right, let's let this thing rock and roll. I mean, it was hugely important to both of us. I mean, because he's been such a good friend over the years, sitting in the background and talking and doing stuff. But I mean, we sit and talk numbers. We sit and talk stats. We sit and talk tech. We sit and talk about what stupid things have happened. We sit and talk family stuff. We sit and talk, even though we had this great relationship over the fact that we'd never met in person, but we spent a lot of time together. And there's so many friends I've got like that, some of whom I've never met in person and may, in some cases, may never meet in person, but they're still very close, very personal. And, I think for a lot of us in the last year and a half, kept some of us less insane than usual. But that's part of the business too, is have the right network of people that you're close to that you can sit there and go and say, this is just blown to shit. What do I do? Because at the end of the day, one of the worst things that happens to everybody, and you have to recognize when it's happening, you get in your rabbit hole and you cannot see your way out. It'll be obvious to everybody else around you, but they will not see your way out. One of the things that happened last year in the middle of the summer, when pandemic hit and all that kind of stuff started happening, because of who we are, the wife and I sat down and said, okay, what is our contingency plan structure? If this happens, at what point will we go, and this was very early on, at what point will we go deal with family issues? Will we do this? Will we do this? Will we do this? And we went through and built out a pretty, I won't say detailed, but we went through and said, okay, here's the contingencies. And one of the contingencies was, if her mother got COVID, she wasn't coming off the mountain. I will save part of that story because it probably doesn't need to be aired, but the short version of it is this. My mother-in-law got the COVID from her own stupidity, to the point where it took me calming her down and looking and saying, here's the plan. Are we going to rewrite the plan? And it was taking that moment and looking and saying, I need you to come out of your rabbit hole and think for a minute before you go down and do what you're talking about going down to go do, for us to get her mother into the hospital, because it was that much of a case that we had to get her into the hospital. The fact that we had talked it through, as I keep nailing the mic, the fact we had talked it through, we already had planned for this as a hypothetical, meant when it happened, we were much easier and ready to deal with that. And this is one of those things that with the friends that I'm tight with, we sit around and do this game.
Mhm.
We talk contingencies. We talk about, if this happens, what do we do?
Yeah.
That means when shit goes wrong, you're not panicking over it. It means you go, okay, well, I've at least thought about it. I may not do what we talked about, but I've at least thought about it. I've got a way to deal with it. And I've got a support network of people to call and go and say, all right, X, Y, and Z is happening. I know that there's this, and this. My gut feel says to do this, but my head wants to just go do that. And that's when you've got friends that can talk you off the ledge,
Yep.
that can pull you back in.
Or at the very least, a guy like me, I just like a guy like me. Try to tell me what to do. I'm probably gonna I like to not do it. So I'm that much of a I am a contrarian by nature. But if you go to me, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this, and this? I need friends like that who will actually, because that's what I need. I don't. It's knowing what you need as a person. Like I kind of have an idea what I'm going to do, but sometimes I don't see the forest from the trees, and I know that. And sometimes you need someone to go. Have you considered that this tree has this? No, I haven't. You probably should. And you're like, sometimes I'm like, I probably should. And that's what a good friend does, right? Is they'll point out those things where it's like, okay, I'm not going to tell you what to do because I also get this feeling about you. If I tried to tell you what to do, you'd probably tell me to go fuck myself. Probably. But if I
Probably.
said right, but if I said, James, have you thought about this? Or have you seen this? And if your answer is yes, I have, okay, cool. If you haven't, okay, take a look, right?
And I am stubborn, and I've been known to look and go and say, I've considered this, and this. I recognize and acknowledge that the better choice is this. But I'm going to go feel better when I go do this, and I'll deal with the implications later. In my glorious old age, I don't do that anywhere near as often as I might have in my misspent youth. But having been born a grumpy old man, and gradually working backwards, I kind of get that blend of experience and still being stupid, and being willing to go say every once in a while it's worth it to go look and tell somebody just to go fuck off.
Yeah. No,
And if you
I think that would be one of the ways you do it too. I just off the top of my head, I'm just like, you don't like I said this, you don't need much from really anybody, right? So just like if someone went out there, it's like came off a high horse, like I don't know if you're at that point where you punch somebody anymore, but there might I could see it. Like I could see that thought cross your mind, right? Just off the top of my head, just I could see it, right?
having played football, having played rugby, having been a bartender and a bouncer in my misspent youth, there might have been a physical altercation or two that has occurred. However, I have generally, and doing Scottish heavy athletics, other things like that. Generally, I'm smart enough to know it's not worth it to do that, but it's worth to tell somebody I'm willing to do this if I have to.
Mm-hmm. No,
But
yeah, it's something we said earlier, but I got that impression from you, just like also the fact that you played rugby, impressive. You're like one of the toughest like 3 or 4 athletes on the planet. If you played rugby for any length of time, you're a pretty tough dude,
oh
right?
yeah,
So
the broken shoulder in here and stuff like that feels like hell. It was all intramurals and stuff like that. But
well, no, it's rugby's a tough sport. Like the only things that I might consider tougher than this is just it. An MMA fighter, maybe a gymnast. Yeah,
yeah,
they're about it. And it's not knock anybody else, and maybe a hockey player. That's it. Like one, and that one's a maybe. That one's a maybe. They play on a more volatile surface than you do, but you wear no, like it's full contact. It's like, yeah, rugby is not for the faint of heart. So,
God, it was so much fun though.
yo, totally. It's great to get your aggression out. It's a healthy, like you want. It's that weird balance of you get to unleash a big cool part of yourself, but at the same time, like thing is, you don't want to break someone permanently because that's no fun. But you want to let out some aggression. Not after it's not so fun. During might be fun, but after not so fun.
There occasionally is somebody that it would. You tell yourself you'd feel much better if you broke them, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. No, again, I understand. I understand. My father grew up in Detroit. I'm Maltese. Lived Viking German in me. I got a little bit of a savage in me. I understand the feeling. More often than not, it's not the case. But the thought does cross your mind. Yeah, yeah, but
I tell myself I'd feel much better, but I really know I wouldn't. But don't tempt me.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been a very long
yeah. I
time
know.
since.
I get you. I get you. So but like I said, it's being an adult. Like going full circle is at the end of the day we do what we want to do. Even people are like going back to purpose for a second. This was the hardest. Like I learned this about 4 years ago, and when I learned it, it made me forgive everybody. Yeah, I understood it a little bit. Everybody does exactly what they want to do. The only real question is this: are people conscious of the wants they want and are actually going out of their way to try to achieve it? Or are they unconsciously aware or acting out of things like fear or right? Because if it's the latter, like there's really no wrong decision in this life. There really isn't. It's why you do it. I think more often than not, it's the whys that dictate whether it was a right decision or a wrong decision. A decision in of
Intention
itself.
is
Yeah.
intention is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, we all do things out of fear at some point. We all have that one moment where you're like, yeah, this is, there's
Yeah.
always that fight or flight reaction. I don't have a good flight reaction.
No.
I realize that might be a shocker
I somehow feel like that would be almost the last thing you do.
because I'm old, I'm slow, I'm beat up. If the dragon's coming to town, I'm more than likely to go, damn it, somebody pour you a drink and hand me a sword.
Yeah. It's just easier to slay the damn thing than to fucking run from it.
Because it's the old lesson of I may lose, but I'm not going to be the only one bleeding, and and I know that about myself as well, which is not necessarily always the healthiest thing either. But it also means that a lot of the time I'll face something head on, going, this is a bad idea, but the only path, the paths I see through it. There are times that I will go and stop and go, yep, no, I'm going to cut that off and just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's frequently a hard decision because it's usually the things that you really want to see happen the most. You're like,
no, I think I can relate to you a little bit there. I just think it's you recognize that there are just some things, time, effort, energy. You can't get those back. You just can't. So if it's a waste of my time, I won't do it. If it's a waste of my energy, why am I doing it? Like there has to be something in there, and if it's for my effort, what am I getting out of it? Now, if more people thought like that, I think we'd be. But again, that doesn't come when you're young. That comes as you get older. Slash, we're gonna put a question mark on wiser because I don't know if I'm actually that wise, but it's just something I've learned. It's just it does happen like that.
it's again, and this is one of those things I preach a lot of is if you're going to do something, do it with intention. If you're gonna spend the time, the energy, and the money on something, do it with an intention. Have an idea, know why you're doing it. It may not be a good intention, it may not be a good reason, but at least have an intention when you do it. That way, and then forget regret because once you make the choice, you make the choice.
Yeah.
I can always make more money. I can't make more time.
Yeah. And on top of that, at the end of the day, and it's going back to say the wants, unconscious wants, regrets are almost always come from the unconscious,
Mhm.
not from the conscious.
And one of the biggest lessons that come out of Dune, there's the famous line: "Fear is the mind killer."
Mm-hmm.
Fear is the thing that stops people from doing the thing, and often, and this is the most tragic part of that, it's fear that stops them from doing the thing that will let them achieve what they want. And so often it's that fear of, how will people perceive me if I do X?
Yeah, that's a big one. That is a big one. I also it takes a long time to realize this. I think I like during the pandemic. Like I said, I get the feeling we don't probably completely agree on our stances on that. We're not going to go into that tonight. But it's like whatever.
It
But right, whatever. But here's the thing, right? I realized something during the year and a half. There's all kinds of fears playing out in this time. Fear of dying, which totally natural. Hey, everybody except for maybe me because I already had this little crisis at 25, right? Had to come to terms with the fact that you are mortal and something is going to kill you. And when something is this visibly out there, you got no choice but to face that, right?
death does not worry me so much.
No, no, no.
My own death does not bother me.
No,
I
no, no.
will I will tell you what bothers me is loss of cognitive capabilities.
Yes.
Um, Pretty sure I've already had the plague early on from getting it from a convention. And I still have not fully recovered it. I've not gotten all of my stamina back. I've still got some lung, and I can tell you, I still have not fully recovered all of what I would consider in terms of that cognitive capabilities. Yeah, there's still times where stuff gets a little foggy. Now, it's not like debilitating fog of me sitting there. It's the, and it, just as much of the old man of, why did I come in this room? But I mean, there's little things that I can tell. I'm still never quite gotten back to 100%. And I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of things that are geared around just around that. That's me. That's some of the stuff that I do and focus on. And we've had a bunch of other stuff that's come down and happened, like everybody else has had shit happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking the cumulative effect of all of those things that you look at that cause pain and grief and everything else, and you look and go, how am I going to react to that? And sometimes that reaction is, I'm going to just go shut down because that's what I have to do, because otherwise. But then at some point you have to come out of that and go and say, okay, I now have to integrate that and move on. And there's risk to everything. There is no such thing as a risk-free life.
Oh, they'll never exist. It's you just have to weigh the options and that you think, based on the information you have, make the best guess based on that. Hope for the best, and be smart enough, because I is never fall in love with an outcome. And if you, as long as you don't fall in love with an outcome, you'll always be able to bounce with new information that comes your way. Mm-hmm. The moment you fall into in love with an outcome, that's when people resist stuff.
Well, and I mean, for us, we do a lot of work with other people. We do a lot of client stuff. I do a lot of teaching. I do a lot of these things. That was probably one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, was I cannot be invested in someone else's outcome. I cannot do what I do for what I believe their outcome should be, because that's not doing me a service. That's not doing them a service. The way I have to approach it is, I am happy to give you tools and answers and create options. I can't write your story for you. And I can't be unhappy or disappointed if you take the narrative and the outline I create for you and you tell a different story. It's not my story. I don't have to live it. I don't have to deal with the repercussions of it. But there are times that there is this thing of, I really wish you hadn't done that way. Or I really wish you had listened when I suggested A, B, and C. And that's been one of those points of growth for me is going from that point of saying, this is what you need to go do, just go do it. Just trust me, go do it. And realizing I'm not their parent.
Mhm.
And I have had, it's I'm going to give you guidance. I will give you, I will give you a path, and I never expect or trust that anybody's going to go take every step along the path I'm going to give them, because if they do, there's a lot of things you're going to miss along the way.
Mhm.
It's that idea of, you have to figure out what's the story you want, where do you want to get to, what is it you want to make happen. Having an idea of an outcome, have an outcome, have a goal,
Mhm.
have something you want to see happen. But I can guarantee that, no matter what the plan is you laid out, it ain't gonna work. A good plan means you've thought things through, and a good plan means you know how to deal with things that go wrong. And it means that you've considered all of the reasonable options as best you can.
Mhm.
Because there's always going to be that thing that comes up that you're like, where the hell did that come from? Like some of the company growth stuff we were working on. We had a plan for a whole lot of live events, live workshops, stuff like that. And pandemic. Well, that plan went to shit.
Not needed.
Pivot. It's that, because you cannot force a part of your plan to happen, and sometimes it's something small, sometimes it's something big, but because you can't force something to happen, do you just stop? I've had times in life where that's happened to me, where it was like, the shit, that didn't work, I'm just going to, and walk away from it. I've done it. And sometimes that's been a mistake. Sometimes it's been the right thing to do. And sometimes it was the wrong thing to do, but the right thing to do at the time.
Mhm.
And you learn, you live, and move forward, and accept that not everything's going to work. But if you don't, it's all about trying new things, knowing that probably 80% of them aren't going to work. It's the 20% that do, that make the big wins.
And sometimes even when it doesn't work, it still works in the sense that, so my very first published work was almost a complete accident. I didn't plan it. I had this idea for something else, and I came up with a story, and I wrote it. I just started writing it, and I just kept writing it, and I realized that this was the story I'm telling. Screw what I was thinking of. This is where I'm going. We all have had that. Most people don't have, right? Most people don't have this. Like my master plan was, I wanted something for conventions that'd be fun to introduce myself back. Because after I got my ass kicked a long, long time ago, where I met my mortality and all these other things that made me the crazy, individual that I am today. I so I published it back on the days which is Smashwords when ebooks were still kind of still getting their traction. And someone I interviewed, going back to networking districts, someone I interviewed a long even before this podcast, just interviewed to encourage. She read my stuff, and she said to me, "I really like this. What you gonna do with it?" Plan I basically just told you is what I told her. She goes, "Well, I just gotta deal with Ingram. I'm starting a publishing house. I'll publish your work. Sometimes good accidents, things not going to plan, is sometimes the absolute best thing that can happen,
Mm-hmm.
right?"
Well, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the idea of luck.
Mhm.
And, this is one of those things that, again, was one of those hard lessons, is that idea. Part of me says that luck doesn't exist. There is random chance and probabilities. And, we all know people that we perceive as being extraordinarily lucky. Now, right now in this time, we talk a lot about privilege. There is reality to privilege. Everyone has some privilege in some way, shape, or form, whether they know it or not, or whether they know how to leverage it or not, or whether they should leverage it or not. Luck is very different. And luck is something that we create, we manifest it. And largely luck comes because we were out doing something else.
Mhm.
And the more that you do, the more people you meet, the more people you interact with. It's not about the hundreds of people I've ever met or thousands of people I've met one time that then I never talked to again. It's about the very small number of people that I meet, we gel with, and something comes out of it. You can call that luck, the fact that the right person picked it up at the right time and was like, oh, by the way, is that luck? Yep. But you created that. You created it because you created the work. You created it because you were out doing the things that created the connections.
Yeah, and the thing is, I kind of, so I have, like, I call it my 9 rules of success. The ninth rule is never fall in love with an outcome. The fourth rule, though, is the rest is rain. It's almost the same thing. The idea is I can put something out, do absolutely everything I know to be correct, and still fail.
Mm-hmm.
The paradox of success, however, is if you don't do those steps, you're almost absolutely guaranteed to fail. It's almost your chances of succeeding are almost completely zero, right? But that's the paradox. You do everything right, you still might fail, but at least you didn't beat yourself. So, what all that happened is I was prepared. Preparation meets opportunity. That's what luck ultimately is. I can't dictate what this book I just released is going to lead to. I don't know. Is it going to crack the top, like, #1 bestseller? I'm not betting on it. I'm not. I would love it, but I'm not betting on it. What I hope and what I'm doing is I will do something. Good thing will happen. I'll do other things. Good things will happen, and over time, it just accumulates. And what it looks like, cool. But it's just literally just falling and just doing what you know how to do to the best of your ability. And honestly, I think that honesty and earnest effort means a lot more than I think we give it credit for. And I think life is inherently unfair, but that's not always a bad thing. It means that, and I don't mean like unfair as in like one has the exact, like you said, the exact same privilege. Not the exact same privileges. We don't have the exact same strengths, weaknesses. Everything is kind of, it's all about what you can leverage to some degree. But I think there's also just that there's a machinery in place where it's like, well, yeah, no one's going to get the exact same opportunities. However, it's not really about those opportunities, it's what you do with them. And that can lead to other things. And so, and the best thing, maybe the best thing for all of us, especially when we make mistakes, is yes, life is unfair. That means tomorrow we got a second chance to do it all over again and maybe do it right this time. And that might be the best thing about it in the world.
Well, I mean, here's the thing for me. A, fair doesn't exist and equal doesn't exist. Those are both, they sound like nice words. They don't exist. They're, and it's a harsh thing to say in the world we're in, but they don't exist. They just don't. Nor are they ever going to. The universe is not built that way. Because if you want to talk about things like random chance, the entire planet could be sterilized tomorrow because a pulsar emits the right wave in the right direction, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that. What I am going to worry about are the things that I can control, and generally I can't even control most of those, but I can control how I react to them. And I also don't believe in failure. There are things that may not work the way I intended. Sometimes that leads to a good outcome, sometimes it leads to a bad outcome. It's not necessarily failure, it's the idea that that didn't deliver on what I wanted it to do or expected it to do. What can I learn from it? And what's the lesson in it? And what's the benefit that comes out of that? I may be pissed off about the time or energy or money that may have been spent on it. And this is one of those hard lessons of old age, is looking at it going, okay, I made a poor choice here. Why did I make that choice? What were the steps that led me to that decision? And being willing to go and say, don't do that again. Oh, shiny, I can make the same exact bad choice again.
Mm-hmm.
Like tequila, every once in a while that just seems like a good idea.
and sometimes you indulge, I'm sure. And sometimes you wake up the next day and go, I'm an idiot, but that's okay.
Actually, mine is usually scotch, but
Yeah,
scotch and Guinness. I mean, but
I respect both choices. I can respect those too.
but it's the willingness is, for lack of a better term, the willingness to be ready to fail and figure out what can I learn from that? What are the implications from that? What can I do or not do? And because you can't control everything in life.
No.
I mean, no matter how hard you try, there's always something that
It's just not going to happen.
entropy wins. So you know that entropy always wins. So therefore, you've only got so much time to go play the game. So go play whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell everybody to go play as hard as you can because most people are not built for it.
No, most people are not. Just do what you're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
I do have this tendency to believe I think everybody has a bit of an idea or a purpose somewhere inside them that they are called to do. I think not enough people do it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm good with it. I just think go with those things, try those things out, and never be afraid to look bad doing it. Just go do it.
Yeah, just don't spell my name wrong unless it's on the indictment. I mean,
Well, they're gonna probably spell my name wrong on the indictment, on the book, unless I'm the one there. I'm good with that. I've made my peace with it.
Again, don't take yourself so. This is where so one of my shows is creating prose. I'm trying to bring it back here in the spring, and I mean, my tagline for that was always take your work seriously and not yourself so much.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, dude, I make fun of myself all the time. Like I said at the very beginning of the show, I get tortured by baked goods from my co-hosts. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at not taking myself too seriously. Life's way too short. I yeah, we probably could go in a bar somewhere, drink a Guinness or a Scotch, and probably just bullshit all night long. I totally get that feeling. We could
for a couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally, totally. That all said, I unfortunately I got a client, and I'm sure you got your own stuff to do as well. But
this has been a lot of fun.
Oh,
do it again.
I enjoyed this chat. Stay with me off the line because I'm like there's a couple things I'm going to ask for. But before we wrap up for the night, why don't you tell people either about Speculative Fiction Academy, either about the latest release coming up, whatever you feel like wanting to talk about here, and how people can find you.
Sure. Well, so in terms of the latest stuff coming out, so right now the Krampus Claus is out in print, which is a nice little holiday. It's a YA horror, Christmas horror, which is it's a fun one. It took forever to come out, but it's out. I like say the Wee Folk, fairy folklore and film theoretically is coming out sometime soon. I was hoping to already have it in hand because my piece is on Dune, and there's that little movie that's flying around right now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even up for pre-order when I looked again yesterday. But talking about the things that are coming up. So in about a week, I'm teaching an online class. I've got a couple of slots left open on the author business plan, and it's kind of how the business works and what are the ways to structure if you really are wanting to go into the publishing business. How can you start building the foundation to make money in it? And in the spring, I've got a couple more live workshops that'll be coming out. But the Speculative Fiction Academy, is really a fun project that we're doing. And the Speculative Fiction Academy, for anybody who hasn't taken a look at it, is it's a bunch of different writers and professionals in the business that are coming out to teach what they know and help everybody do it. I mean, and this is one of those things that is going to be growing for years to come. We're working on a very long list of not only online classes, but there's a lot of things that we have in the pipeline for future development. But it's geared around speculative fiction. I mean, that's what it's there and called. I mean, we focus on science fiction, fantasy, horror, the business side of it. Again, I'm the business dean, and a lot of the content that we'll be bringing in from the business side is coming from my company. We've got a lot of other guest people that are going to be coming in and doing it, productivity, things like that. We're also getting into new media. Somebody that might be on here might be teaching a little bit about podcasting. Joe Compton's coming in to teach some on film. We were talking about Joe earlier, but we've got a lot of people that are publishers in the business. John Hartness's Path to Pub is going to be hopefully going up in the next week or two, which is a class that we produced and published several years ago. Um, we've got a lot of marketing classes coming, as well as how to write in the craft, how to do your research, how to structure a story, how to develop your characters, how to meet the tropes of the business. I mean, it really is a large block of classes, and a lot more is coming. In addition, we also have in the pipeline, sign up for the newsletter. We publish a lot of freebie resources out there, things like that. And also get caught up, because we're going to start doing some live some live things in here, live Q&As, some live teachings, things like this out there to the public, because it really is geared and driven towards teaching people and creating more writers, creating more people in the speculative fiction space, and people that can actually do it to make money, make a living, have fun with it, whatever your goals are. I mean, again, I'm a business guy. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of things I do for my own personal edification and my own personal gratification. That's part of my compensation for writing fiction. Is the money nice? Yeah. It's always nice to make some extra money off of that. Is it my main source of revenue? Nope. But I'll take it. But we work with a lot of clients who are making multiple six figures. We've got a couple of people we're working with making more than seven figures as indie writers. There's money to be made in the business. And here's the fun secret to that. There's nothing to be guilty about, because you're making people happy or giving them an experience.
I like that.
And that's one of those things that I teach, because it's one of those things that I believe. There's a reason that, we see all these streaming services and everybody came and ran to go binge watch stuff. These are creators that are making a living out of what they're doing. And there are ways to do it. And there's ways to do it in the indie market now that, are doing nothing but growing. They're exploding in a lot of new different ways. I'm working on a program right now, which is going to explore how we can use NFTs and managing intellectual property. There's some things along those lines that we're working on. What's coming and growing for people in this space, in the creative space, to make a living is going to amaze people over the next few years. If you only knew some of the things that are coming down the pike. And that, of course, is one thing you can learn from the Speculative Fiction Academy. But I firmly believe we're coming back to an age of entrepreneurialism. And, we've seen it coming with the gig economy. It's kind of in its infancy. And for those people that are wired that way, for people that want to make a living and want to control their lives, they absolutely can do it, but you have to be ready to do the work. It's not here's the magic pill and you're only going to work 4 hours a week. The 4-hour magic work week, they don't tell you the other part of the story. It is a lot of work, but it is extraordinarily rewarding work, not only financially, but if you've got that control where it's the end of the day, I know I can always pay my bills. I know I've got money to work with. Then all the other money that you make past that point becomes a tool. Because once you recognize that money is nothing but a tool that enables you to do things or help people or whatever it is you want to do, then at that point, you kind of become separated from that outcome, other than as long as the bills are paid and you're not hungry and worried about, are the lights going to stay on? Because if the lights go out, how are you going to write the book? Mm-hmm. Take care of the basics, get a good solid foundation. But if you're willing to put in the time and the energy, that the overnight success is pretty much a lie. It happens, but the vast majority of people we see that are quote unquote overnight successes come because they put in the work. And that's a lot of what we're putting behind the SFA. And that's a lot of the things that I put behind it, Author Essentials. So if you're interested in catching up with me, always try to I'm always happy to chat. My schedule stays packed. I will tell you that. But you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, continualconvention.com, Speculative Fiction Academy.com. I do spend time back and forth on Facebook. If you're looking for me, that's an easy place to catch me, is on, you know, well, yeah, the Zuckerberg universe. Instagram, YouTube, Twitch. I'm on Discord. I occasionally do show up on Twitter, the hive of scum and villainy that it is. Shoot me an email, ping me a message to the website. But I mean, the easiest things to do, catch me on Messenger. I mean, I'll respond to most things. Long as you're not trying to sell me something, at least say hi before you try to sell me something. But other than that, I'm not too hard to find. Other than, what am I doing at the time and what kind of crazy stuff am I up to? And, I've got a lot of events and conventions coming up. I'll be at MarsCon in January in Virginia. Then April, July, and October next year, and incredibly busy for me on the road. There's a few other events that are potentially popping up between now and then. I do a lot of science fiction and fantasy conventions. I do a lot of workshops. We're trying to line up and do another round of retreats and stuff next fall. The retreats we do are going to be targeted. One of the ones we're trying to put together for next fall is going to be an editor's retreat. And a couple of people that are lined up to come help teach and do that are some amazing people, amazing editors that come from some really major publishing houses. So kind of happy to be pulling that one together. There are a few more nice little surprises in the package, but that are going to be coming, because we're going to be trying a bunch of new stuff, some of which is going to work, some of which is not, and hopefully I can continue to be a bad example for others. Entertaining. Whatever it's supposed to be.
Oh, whatever it's supposed to be. And ladies and gentlemen, that will do it with James P. Nettles III tonight. I enjoyed this chat. I'm sure I think he did too, for the most part. Right? I made him laugh a few times, so I guess I'm not all bad.
Oh, this is great. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. But for everybody watching, listening, thanks for watching, listening. First off, subscribe to my Twitch, twitch.tv/justjoshingpodcast. If you want to subscribe, feel free to come in, chat, say hi. Obviously, I'm pretty much on every audio platform known to man, so if you just want to find and listen to these shows there, go right ahead and do that. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pantalaresco. Hit like, subscribe, enable notifications there. My latest book is Alice 1. If you want to see Alice from Alice in Wonderland to play croquet against Jason of the Argonauts, this is definitely the story for you. It's a little absurd, and it's in the underworld as well, the Greek underworld. So I mashed up Alice and Greek together. I think you might actually get a kick out of that. But for those watching, those listening, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Stay inspired, keep shining in the dark. Tomorrow night, Sean, joins us for the last drink and draw of the year, at least the regular drink and draw of the year. So until then, guys, keep on riding.